if the offense gets stuck in the mud a little bit, goes up against a defense which, has a line that can, stand up to USC's running game, because Michigan State, warm knife through butter, or knife through warm butter. USC was able to do what it wanted on the ground. Like, USC is just not facing high-end defensive fronts, but that is going to change. Whether it's Illinois, I'm not sure, but certainly Michigan, certainly Notre Dame. The sledding's going to get tougher. What happens if USC gets involved in a rock fight? So Crash first, and then Ethan second on this one.
If the offense struggles, especially if someone gets injured and USC struggling there, USC could very much find themselves, in some trouble. Like, because there are going to be some good defenses on the schedule, like you said, Matt. Obviously, you mentioned Michigan, Notre Dame, possibly Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa. Kirk Ferentz always has good defenses with the Hawkeyes, and then especially Oregon too, like with Dan Lanning's background as a defensive coordinator. Those are some defenses that just given a quick scroll through the schedule that have me a little worried that if USC just gets stuck because either due to injuries, an off night, or just a better defense, that in general, they could have some trouble in those games, and they could possibly lose the results of the offense, especially if the defense isn't doing their job, as we're sometimes seeing with the blown plays in the secondary.
I think if is the key word in your question. If the offense has a clunker, we haven't seen it yet. What have they punted, like 4 times on the season? Like this, and they one of the times was at the end of the Michigan State game when the game was already decided. They haven't punted in a situation where the game is undecided yet in the entire season. And there's nothing so far besides, there's a couple of key concerning injuries. And, you want to go on a rant about Lincoln Riley mismanagement. He never lets people know what's going on with injuries. And it just is incredibly frustrating as a fan, because I have no idea what's going on with Jacoby Lane and a media member. And it doesn't matter, people who are in the building day in and day out, people who are media members who, are doing their best to cover this team from at home. It doesn't matter. Nobody knows what's going on, because Lincoln Riley has not said what the injury is, how long it will keep him out. It's all vague. So if you want to go on a Lincoln Riley rant, that's one that I will go on. Same thing with Elijah Page. Like, will we ever know what's going on with Elijah Page? Do we know what's going on with half the guys who are injured on the roster? No, we don't. Like, does Lincoln Riley have the right to keep that information secret? I guess so. But it's just incredibly frustrating as a fan, as a media member, as anyone who's trying to cover this team, to know, the players that they have and what they're going up against in the future, what's going on and how to prepare and how to kind of mentally prepare for these games. So I think that that's really frustrating. But, with my little mini rant on that aside, I do think it's kind of an if. I mean, I tweeted out after the game ended yesterday a stat comparison between Maiava's season so far in 2025 and Caleb Williams' 2022 Heisman season. And I'm going to pull it up real quick because I think it's really interesting. So Caleb Williams threw 4 games in his 2022 Heisman season, 1,054 passing yards, 9 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. Maiava's stats through 4 games, 1,223 yards, 9 passing touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns. So he has more yards, same amount of pass TDs, more rushing touchdowns, and neither of them threw any picks through the 4 games. So Maiava's effectively had a better season through 4 games than Caleb Williams did when he won the Heisman in 2022. So Maiava's playing incredible. Lincoln Riley said over and over that this running back room is the deepest he's ever had, and I believe it. Having just kind of the dual-edged sword in this game of Wayman Jordan and Eli Sanders was beautiful, was incredible. Also, a note, I don't think that Michigan State's run defense is great by any means, but this was like the first time they'd allowed any significant yards on the ground. Their run defense up to this point had performed decently well throughout the season. Again, playing cupcake opponents. But
playing cupcake opponents. Not trying to pile on you, Ethan, but just like, if you watch our shows every week, like, we want that, right? We want you tuning in every Sunday for post-game, every Tuesday for preview. If you watch our Michigan State preview, we said Michigan State basically tied Boston College, won by 2 points, in overtime, 42-40. Like, we agreed, this is not a good Michigan State defense. No. USC would be able to score, would be able to do what it wanted. So if you listen to our show on Tuesday, like, we were not thinking this was going to be a test for USC's offense. So, like, let's just be clear on that point. All right.
Yeah. I in that game, the 42-40 game, it was all Boston College's passing offense that got them going. They had only 55 rushing yards on the day. In this game, USC had almost 300 rushing yards. So I'd say that that's a big difference. And I'd say that that's a lot credit to USC's talent. You know, like I said, I don't think Michigan State's run defense is good, but I do think you have to give credit to USC for being able to put on that kind of performance. The Lemon and Lane duo, obviously fantastic. Love the way the tight ends have been getting involved. They've been playing well. You know, slight kind of step back in this game for Lake McCree, dropped a couple balls, but, you know, you had Walker Lyons stepping up, scoring a touchdown. So offensive line also, I think that before the Elijah Page injury, this was their best game of the year. I thought that they were crushing skulls, opening up big holes for the runners to run through. And it was just like Maiava didn't get sacked again. Thought beautiful performance from them. So I just haven't seen anything this year that makes me feel like we're really going to put up a clunker against many of these defenses. We all know Notre Dame's defense is awful. They're terrible. Their best game was this past week. They still give up 30 points to Purdue. 30 points to Purdue. Our defense with no secondary just limited Purdue to 17 points. So 30 points to Purdue. That's not good news. Their defense is not getting any better. A lot of people are comparing Chris Ash to Alex Grinch. I think it's a decent comparison.
Me.
Terrible. Yes, including Matt Zemek. So they're bad. Just again, except for Oregon, I'm concerned about the Oregon game in both facets. But except for Oregon, like, there's no Illinois just got 63 hung on them by Indiana. Like, you pick out any of these defenses, I don't think any of them have been performing incredibly. There's like coaches with defensive reputations, but they haven't started the season all that great. So I just think the if in that sentence does matter a lot. And, you know, if it's a clunker, then I think I trust Lincoln Riley this year to adjust his strategy to kind of slow the clock down, keep the defense off the field. You know, even if you're not putting up touchdowns every drive, try to get some first downs, try to run the ball, run clock, because he's shown that he's willing to run the football a lot more this year. So I just think that the play calling strategy of Lincoln Riley, I trust enough to adjust that if this offense ever is struggling, which in 2022, they didn't really until Caleb Williams got hurt. Again, comparing back to 2022, they didn't really struggle until Caleb Williams got hurt in the Pac-12 title game, and the Oregon State game, but Oregon State's offense was god-awful. So that was, you know, not a too big of an issue, but I don't like, and that was not, I don't think that was as great of a year play calling for Lincoln Riley. So I trust his play calling more this year than I did in 2022, I feel like. So I think that the if is an if. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. I think we've arrived at that point in the show where, you know, we've transitioned from defense to offense. So let's talk about the offense. And one obvious thing we have to discuss, no Jacoby Lane. And then Elijah Page gets injured midway through the game, you know, late first half. So just Ethan first, Crash second. Discuss just the, you know, how you perceive this offense adjusted for those injuries. Lane out for the whole game, Page out for roughly half the game, and perhaps how the backups and other role players performed behind them, and what that means for this offense when Lane comes back, and when assuming Page comes back, when he comes back as well. How do you think that reshapes the larger overall outlook for the offense?
Yeah, I think that Mekhi Lemon really stepped up. I think first, you know, give him his flowers. He played like a true number one receiver in this game. You know, I think 8 catches, I believe it was 127 yards and a touchdown, and then had the rushing touchdown as well. So big props to him. And then, you know, obviously leaning even more extensively on the running game in this one. Loved kind of Lincoln Riley adjusting there. There wasn't really a receiver that I feel like stepped up for Jacoby Lane, which is like maybe a potential area of concern, just because, Jaden Richardson didn't really do anything. You had DJ Jordan coming in and on his only catch of the game fumbling. That wasn't a great look. And then, Tanook Hines has had some great catches, and, he had the touchdown in this game, but he's not high volume enough, I don't think, to really replace Jacoby Lane if Jacoby Lane's out for a really extended period of time. So that's like a potential area of concern. But I do think that the adjustments in play calling, number one, I really liked from Lincoln Riley. And number two, I really liked seeing, the guys who are supposed to be the dogs on this offense stepping up and playing great football.
So I think you got to kind of take each injury kind of a little on its own. So I'll start with Elijah Pitch. Because I thought, especially in game, great adjustments from Lincoln Riley and the offensive coaches, moving guys around and just getting 5 guys in there that were able to still play. I thought pretty good for the most part during that game. So I thought that was great. Although obviously it's not great when as we talked about earlier, Lincoln Riley being kind of vague with what's going on with Page's status, saying, I think he said this, and I quote, he said nothing too major. I think it's something he'll bounce back. He'll be able to bounce back from, I think is what Riley said in the post-game press conference. So because of that, I'm like, okay, that's great that it's not too major, but my burning question is, when is he coming back? Because Elijah Page, we've seen him they've stayed patient with him, and we've seen it pay off for him that they were patient with it even when he struggled last year, and he's now turned into one of USC's best offensive linemen this season. So I think he's now a really crucial part of this O-line. So it's really important. I really want to know, when is he going to come back? When? As for Jacoby, USC did not miss him really on last night, especially with how Mekhi Lemon just stepped up and was just an absolute beast on the field as soon as the ball was in his general vicinity. So, and in a game like Michigan State, okay, that works, but obviously I know, Ethan, you're kind of going to wait and see if, the defense, what defenses tend to be good, but what if it is a good defense? And it's in that case, I'm kind of worried, because pretty much good defenses are going to be all right, Jacoby's out. We're going to go out for Mekhi when they pass. And you know what? We're going to let them we're going to make them beat us with someone else. And I mean, obviously Lemon and Lane are a great duo, and Mekhi and Lemon's great, but I'm just worried that if one of them's out, who's going to really step up? I'm not saying you can't have 2 main guys, but if one of those guys goes down, who is going to step up and kind of be that temporary wide receiver 2 when USC is really going to desperately need it, because good defenses are going to be able to contain Mekhi Lemon?
It's a fascinating conversation, and another fascinating conversation to have is the Jaden Maiava conversation. A lot of people talking about him in the chat, Jeff Rodriguez is saying, New York City Downtown Athletic Club, Heisman finalist, and obviously we'll see as the season goes along, but it's easier to make that case just week to week. You see the steadiness, the consistency, not making turnovers. That's so important. Jaden Maiava is protecting the ball, and he's giving you the dynamic athleticism as well. And to me, and this is connected to Lincoln Riley's play calling. And I'll invite your comments here, Crash and Ethan. It just is really crystal clear to me that, and this is not a criticism, Miller Moss, great guy, loyal Trojan, wish him the absolute best. He gave everything to USC, was so loyal to this program. He's just a drop back quarterback. He's a 7-step drop back guy who works best in a pro style offense, get the ball out quickly. He's just not a dual threat guy. Not even a criticism. That is just the stylistic box. It's the framework within which Miller Moss operated. It seems very clear to me that Lincoln Riley needs dual threat, dynamic athletes who can do a little bit of everything, who can run, who can really move in short, quick bursts, who are willing to do different things on different plays and aren't limited stylistically. in terms of needing a certain structure, a certain framework. Lincoln Riley's play calling, and it obviously comes alive with a dual threat guy like Caleb, like as it did for Kyler, Baker, Jalen Hurts, etc. Because Lincoln Riley's genius, as we saw in this game against Michigan State, it was less about run versus pass, though that's part of it. It's also stretching the field and making defenses account for the full width of the field. Swing pass. Let's get you over to the far side, defense. You're going to have to go all the way to the boundary to defend. Then I'm going to jab you up the middle. Then I'm going to do an option play where you're going to pinch inside because you know that I can hit you up the middle, but then I'm going to go back outside. And then I'm going to jab you again in the midsection, in the middle third of the field. Lincoln Riley was pulling the defense out, hitting them up the middle, pulling the defense out, hitting them up the middle. He just gets defenses on a string. Do I go wide? Do I go inside? And he's just scrambling their brains. And like whatever they guess, USC was doing the opposite because he was just constantly moving where he was. It was like Muhammad Ali, just dancing in the ring, not giving the defense a clear target. That's when Lincoln Riley is really at his best. And of course, that can't happen with a quarterback who's chained to the pocket the way Miller Moss is. Jaden Maiava is executing this offense. Jeff Rodriguez said he's staying within the plan. That really helps. Caleb would wander off on the reservation at times. Now, he made brilliant improvisational plays, but like Maiava is executing. He's sticking to the game plan, the structure of the offense, and he's just executing at a letter perfect level. So your thoughts on Lincoln Riley's play calling and just how well it's working with Jaden Maiava? Crash first, Ethan second.
Matt, I absolutely agree with you on all of that because, like you said, Miller Moss, Miller Moss, one of the most loyal Trojans we've seen in recent history. Like, you got to give that guy credit. Obviously, maybe his time here didn't end the way he'd hoped, and I'm wishing him nothing but the best, and I hope he has great success both at Louisville and at the next level should he make it to the NFL. That being said, though, he just was not the right guy for the type of offense Lincoln Riley runs. And that became pretty evident. Honestly, I've said this. I've said this here, and I've said this on over the years. From the moment I saw Jaden Maiava in his first spring game at USC, I'm like, wait, maybe this guy should be the starter. Maybe not Miller Moss. Obviously, I think it was fair that Miller got his chance, especially with the loyalty and dedication and service that he has brought to USC for 4 years. But at the end of the day, I think just Jaden Maiava is just the right fit for the type of air raid offense Lincoln Riley runs. And like you said, you go back, look at all the guys that Riley has coached to Heisman's or just in general coached and now in the NFL. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, even Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams, all those guys, they're all those dual threat quarterbacks. So because of that they fit better with his system, like you said. And so that's just how Jaden Maiava is. And especially just he's able to really just execute in just with both his legs and his arm. And that's what really just makes him impressive and why, especially now he's been here, he's developed in Lincoln's system. He's really been able to, get comfortable. And now that he's, knows he was going to be the guy coming in, I think it gave him that courage to be like, all right, I got this. Like, I think he starts trying to get more confident last year. I remember I covered a football practice after he was made the starter, and I've heard he was like kind of shy. Now he was like right before he took the mic, for anyone asked a question like, how's everybody doing? Like, he was kind of trying to break out of that shell. And I think you're now seeing him just be more confident and like with everything he's doing. So it's been really exciting to see him just not only develop as a player, but also just even like a person off the field too, as a result of just the confidence that Lincoln Riley has instilled in him since making him the starter last year.
Yeah, I think that, Maiava's legs have brought a lot of value to this offense. Obviously, it should be pointed out that some of his struggles last year are due to the fact that he wasn't 100% healthy. And, that's something that Lincoln Riley's talked about that kind of limited his running ability. And, I do think that after you've had Eli Sanders and Wayman Jordan running down your throats, and then he runs an option play and scampers into the end zone like he did on that first touchdown, like thing of beauty, obviously incredible. I do though just want to make sure that when we're talking about Maiava's dual threat ability, we give enough credit to his pocket passing ability, because like the fact of the matter is he's also a better pocket passer than Miller Moss. Like if Maiava was still limited running this year, but had also just increased in his passing ability, his decision making, his confidence, he probably wouldn't be having as great of a season, but it would be probably pretty close to it, because his arm talent is incredible. He's been making great decisions. I think Jeff made a comment somewhere in the chat. I can't find it, but he made a comment somewhere in the chat about the audibles he's calling at the line. Those are all great. Thought that, the Fox broadcast did a really good job actually of highlighting, whenever he called an audible and what, that kind of meant. It was, RG3 in the booth. So I feel like he's kind of a guy who knows about, quarterback play. But I think that, just wanted to make sure that I shouted him out for that, because I think even apart from his running ability, like his ability to run the offense just as a pocket passer has been incredible. And I think it would have unlocked a lot for this offense if that was the only thing that was working for him this year. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the more talent you can have, the better. And his running has obviously, like on that touchdown play, has obviously unlocked even another dimension for this.